400 years. For 4 long centuries, the Israelites lived as slaves in Egypt. They grew used to the heavy labor, the shouts of the overseers, the humiliation. Every day their hearts cried out to God, "Lord, deliver us." And God heard their cry. He sent Moses, a man who once fled Egypt, but now returned with a mission from the Lord. Pharaoh refused to let the people go, so God sent 10 terrible plagues. The Nile turned to blood, darkness covered the land, hail destroyed the crops, and the final plague took the lives of Egypt's firstborn. Pharaoh could not bear it any longer. He said to Moses, "Go, leave Egypt with your people." And so, thousands of men, women, and children left the land of slavery. They were free, they were walking into their future, but ahead lay uncertainty, and behind them, the place they once called home. But freedom did not last long. Pharaoh changed his mind. He gathered his entire army, hundreds of chariots, armed soldiers, and Egypt's finest horses. He would bring the Israelites back, or destroy them. The Israelites saw dust rising on the horizon. The army was coming. And ahead of them lay the Red Sea, a massive body of water they could not cross. They were trapped. Fear gripped the people. They cried out, despairing, "Moses, why did you bring us out of Egypt?" Frantic, "We would rather be slaves than die here in the desert." Panic swept through the crowd. It felt like the end, but Moses stepped forward. He lifted his voice and said resolute, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." His words were a challenge to the impossible. But the eyes of the people were still full of fear. Moses stood at the edge of the vast sea, the cold wind whipping around him, his heart heavy but determined. The Israelites behind him were trembling with fear, their voices a mixture of desperate cries and hopeless whispers. He raised his eyes to the darkening sky and prayed with all his might, "Lord God, what shall we do? The enemy is upon us, and the sea blocks our path. How can we escape this trap?" For a moment, silence answered him. Then, a calm voice spoke in his heart, clear and commanding. "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the people to move forward, to step into the unknown with faith. Lift your staff, Moses, and stretch out your hand over the waters. Watch as I make a way where there is no way." Moses felt a surge of strength and courage. Though the sea before him was vast and roaring, he knew God's promise was unshakable. Turning to the people, he shouted, "Prepare yourselves. God is about to show us his mighty power. Trust him and walk forward." Moses lifted his staff high above his head. The sky seemed to hold its breath. At first, the waters lay still. The wind whispered softly, then began to pick up. A gentle breeze grew stronger with each passing second. It swept over the surface of the sea, sending ripples that grew into waves. Then, in a sight that no eye had ever witnessed, the sea began to tremble. Great walls of water rose like towering cliffs on either side, glistening in the fading light. In the middle, a dry path appeared, dark, solid earth stretching far into the horizon. The Israelites gasped in disbelief, their fear giving way to awe. Step by step, the people began to walk forward. Mothers carried their children, elders leaned on their staffs, and animals followed closely behind. The wind continued to howl. The water pressed against the invisible barrier, but it held firm. The ground beneath their feet was cracked but dry. The echo of hooves and hurried footsteps faded behind them as they crossed the miraculous passage. A pathway carved by the hand of God. Behind them thundered the Egyptian army. The earth shook beneath the pounding wheels of chariots. Horses reared and screamed, and soldiers shouted fierce commands. Pharaoh's wrath was unrelenting, his eyes burning with hatred, determined to crush the fleeing slaves. The chariots sped into the path through the sea, but the ground was treacherous. The dry seabed began to soften beneath their wheels, sucking in the heavy iron and wooden spokes. Soldiers struggled to pull their horses free. Panic spread through the ranks like wildfire. "The Lord is fighting for Israel," some cried, their voices trembling with fear and awe. But Pharaoh pressed on, desperate not to lose face. The army pushed deeper between the towering walls of water, into the heart of God's miracle. When the last Israelite stepped safely onto the far shore, Moses raised his staff once more. The walls of water loomed, tall and mighty, on either side. But now a new wind began to blow, fierce and wild. With a thunderous crash, the great sea began to collapse. The walls trembled, quivered, then fell, like a mighty fortress brought down by the hand of God. Torrents of water surged back together, swallowing the chariots, the horses, and the soldiers. The mighty Egyptian army was swallowed whole by the roaring sea. The cries of men turned to silence. The waters calmed as if nothing had happened, but the battlefield was empty. God's victory was complete. The Israelites stood in stunned silence, the roar of the sea replaced by a profound stillness. Tears streamed down faces worn by fear and suffering. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they had witnessed. Moses raised his hands and praised the Lord with a voice full of run. "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." His sister Miriam led the women in song and dance, tambourines ringing out in celebration. Hope blossomed in the hearts of the people. They were no longer slaves, they were free, and their God was mighty to save. This day marked a new beginning, a powerful reminder that God's promises are true and His power is unmatched. When you feel trapped and the way seems impossible, remember, God can part the seas in your life. Trust Him, step forward in faith, and watch Him make a way where there is none. With God, no obstacle is too great.